your day is winding down, they're just getting started. This is South Coast Tonight with Chris McCarthy and Marcus Farrow. They've got you covered on all the news of the day, from local issues to politics on both sides of the aisle. This is the place where the movers and shakers come to be heard, to listen, and where they're held accountable. This is South Coast Tonight on WBSM.
Welcome to South Coast Tonight. I'm Marcus.
I'm Chris.
Did you enjoy the first weekend of football?
I did. Marcus, well, you and I were busy here on Friday night, enjoying ourselves, enjoying the audience. Got a lot of callers on Friday night. It was a good time on Friday night.
It was great. We had, so just for people who might want to catch the podcast later, yes. We had former Mayor Scott Lang, who's also, as you know, a longtime Democrat strategist. So he has a lot of stories. So we were able to talk to him about, the low voter turnout in the city and how, it's happened over the last few years. Maybe it was a change in leadership or maybe it was something else. But over the last few years, voter turnout in the city in municipal elections has dropped precipitously. So we were talking a lot about that. And we also talked about a story that his daughter produced for Good Morning America, which was really nice.
About football.
About football, actually, about high school football.
And while all that was going on, there was a big football game at the Paul Walsh Field, New Bedford versus Taunton, New Bedford High School versus Taunton. And when we left the studio, we found out, we got to our respective abodes, that there had been a big fight there. And so much now, not between the players as far as we know.
No, it was between the crowd.
It was the crowd, right? The crowd started fighting. They had to call in New Bedford Police, obviously, the State Police, Freetown Police, Dartmouth Police, I believe Fairhaven Police were also there, and Acushnet. That's just about everybody in our mutual aid portfolio.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
To include, don't let me forget this, the State Police. Oh, and the Sheriff's Department came as well. The Sheriff's Department as well, and they had canines. The New Bedford canines were there, and the Sheriff's Department canines were there, Bristol County Sheriff, for this massive disturbance. It was fights, so much so that they had to end the game. Yeah. And Marcus, what I was thinking...
Mercifully, it looks based on the score, honestly.
Well, it was a mercy ending, right?
Yeah.
Because Taunton was way ahead at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But, Marcus, I was thinking about it because you had told, from the top of your head, an unrehearsed story about your own memories of high school football.
Yeah.
Right? That very same night. And I thought to myself, this is a big problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
You had all those New Bedford parents, you had the kids in the game. And as I'd like to point out, it's not the kids in the game that got in the fight.
Right.
You had all the Taunton. I'm assuming there were a lot of Taunton people there. It's only right down the road, right? One of the other cities of Bristol County. They're there to watch their kids play football, to win, apparently. All the parents, and it has to be ended early.
Yeah.
You don't get to do that over again.
No.
Right? I mean...
When you're, and especially for seniors, for people that were, it's really, you only get, it's incredible because you only get like 10 weeks.
Right.
You only get 10 weeks of football, right? And so if you're lucky, 10 to 11. And so...
If you don't have a COVID virus breakout.
Yeah, right, exactly. So when you lose that really sucks because it's gone. You're never going to get that moment back.
You're never going to get it back. And the parents aren't going to get it back. And their memory of the game is marred by violence.
Yeah.
And as I understand it, the police had to escort the Taunton bus out to the highway.
Wow.
That's not good.
No.
That spreads. That type of word spreads.
Mm-hmm.
You wonder what the athletic league is going to do about it.
Yeah.
You wonder, what does that mean for the great institution of football at New Bedford?
Yeah.
When you think about the fact that football's always had a strong program, a lot of great alumni support, and to have an event like the Taunton New Bedford football game marred by violence.
Yeah.
But that's not the only part about the story, Marcus, that's disturbing.
I mean, here's the thing. I mean, a fight to that scale is I think pretty rare.
Yes.
But high school fights happen all the time.
All the time.
When we were I was telling you about the Jamboree when I was a freshman in high school, so I wasn't playing with the varsity yet. When I was a freshman in high school, they had the Jamboree, and it was the 2 Thanksgiving games, Dartmouth and Fairhaven, Stang and Volk. They were all in one place, 4 schools that absolutely hated each other. Right. And so there were fights. The Dartmouth kids were throwing quarters at us, and it was a big brawl. And they actually ended the Jamboree. That was the last year they had the Jamboree. I'm pretty sure because of the activity that took place. There wasn't a need for mutual aid or maybe even that much police involvement at all outside of the cops that were probably there. So it is unique in that regard, but also because apparently this is something that Kate Robinson was able to write in the story.
Yeah, so we have a story up at WBSM.com. You can check out our news director, Kate. Got some breaking news that, so look, we got access, our news department got access to the internal communications that was sent to everybody in the New Bedford Police Department. Okay?
Yeah.
And it's right in the story there. The original story that, as Tim Weisberg wrote Friday night, because, it's fog of war, so to speak. Tim Weisberg, doing his best with the facts he had available to him, puts out the story that about the game being stopped and the fact that there were rumors and they were looking for weapons. They had the canine out there looking for guns. But no weapons were found, is how the story came out, right? No arrests, no weapons. What we found out since then is that that was the official police story that was released by the lieutenant in charge of public relations. No weapons, no arrests. We've since got our hands on the internal communication that went to all the members of the police department, and unfortunately for them, the members of the media too, that there were weapons found.
Yeah.
They found a taser gun. A taser zapper was found by the police. One of the students dropped it, and charges now are pending, against that student for having a taser. Now, a taser's not a deadly weapon unless you have a pacemaker. It might be a deadly weapon to me these days. I don't know, but
I mean, for
it's
just
not good.
Just for legal classification, let's say you were to assault somebody with a taser. It's classified as a dangerous weapon, so it's assault and battery with a dangerous weapon.
So it's not a good charge.
It's a felony charge.
It's a felony.
Yeah,
it's a felony. And I'll tell you,
but he's just got a possession of this weapon, and I'm not entirely sure where classification taser falls under. Honestly, I've only handled firearm cases,
right?
So.
Right, only the big boys.
Yeah,
only the big boys. But I will tell you, look, kids get in fights. That's not a big news story, right? Kids get in fights. They generally don't get into fights that are so involved and so large that it requires multiple police departments and the end of a football game.
Yeah.
Right? So there's something else going on there. Look, when I was a kid growing up out in Freetown and Lakeville, we didn't have gangs, and so I would not use that term here because I think of this as just high school kids. And high school kids get in fights. When I was a kid, I had a group of friends of mine that I hung around with. Other people had other groups of friends. As I recollect on it, if you started a fight with one of my friends, you might have basically been starting a fight with me. I might have gotten involved, or one of my friends might have gotten involved. But it did not constitute a gang, right?
Right.
And so I'm very reticent to use that term. I don't think it's appropriate. We do know there are gangs in New Bedford, obviously. We saw that big bust of the Latin Kings. We know there are Bloods. We know there are other gangs in the area. But that doesn't mean that that's what was going on at that game. I have no reason, no evidence of that, okay?
No.
And I think it would be...
if there was a fight like that happened at Dartmouth, I know I'd be saying there's gangs.
So I think that's a very important distinction, Marcus, right? And so... we may have a little bit of, I would say, urban prejudice, maybe, right? And I'm not saying racism or anything like that because I don't know who the kids were that were fighting.
Sounds
But
like
I really don't know, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you had the Sharks and the Jets, right? The Jets were the white kids in West Side Story. So,
yeah.
I mean, the white kids certainly do have gangs. Arthur Fonzarelli had a gang. I think it was the Falcons, right?
Yeah, right.
That was his stupid gang. But anyway, my point is that there's all kinds of motorcycle clubs out there that are predominantly white. So I don't view it as a race thing. I view it more as an urban thing, right? They go, oh, well, there's gangs in New Bedford, but that doesn't mean there's gangs involved in this fight.
Right.
Now, I guess that could be, but I'm just saying that because the story's bad enough without people inventing or exaggerating it, right?
Yes.
It's bad enough. The city's, as I was talking with one elected official tonight, it's embarrassing for the city.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing for the city. It's not good. Considering you have, right up the road is Taunton. Everyone's going to talk. They're going to go home.
That when you make the schedule next year,
right.
When you're making the schedule and you're reaching out to other athletic directors and all that, trying to put these games in the books, that has consequences.
It has consequences. All the Boosters Club from Taunton or the surrounding towns may say, hey, don't send my kids down there.
Yeah.
I don't want my kid going down
there.
There
Might be a league game or something like that, but, I'm not sure what the leagues look like now.
I always remember this. They had a black quarterback in Charlestown in the 1970s. Someone shot him. They shot him.
Wow.
Yeah. On the field, he was shot.
Wow.
Marcus, in uniform, playing. He was shot. Now, whether it was because he was black, I think at the time they determined it was.
Yeah.
But the point of the matter is that those things have happened, right? And if you're a parent today, you have to think about things like that. Now, there were no guns found, but the fact that there was a taser found, and that's a different story than what the police put out the first time.
Well, so the question is, why did we get one story and we're finding one out later?
Marcus,
and what does that say about the other reporting that we're getting?
There you go. I'll tell you something. I used to be in sales, a sales manager. I used to have a lot of guys that work for me, right? And I used to sit down with them every once in a while because they'd make mistakes, things like that, right? And everyone makes mistakes. But I used to have guys from time to time, and it would usually be the last time I was sitting with them, because I would say, here's all the mistakes you've made. If we notice, they're all in your favor, right? You made money every time there was a mistake made, right? So, people make mistakes, I make mistakes, but 50% of the time it costs you money. 50% of the time you made money on a mistake, right? I'd say, how come you always make money on your mistakes?
Right.
How come all your mistakes are in your favor?
Right.
This is the end of the road. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can't be with you anymore because you're not making mistakes. You're lying to me, right?
Yeah.
So I would just say that it's a really better story. No weapons found.
Yeah,
it's a better story.
It's a better story for.
It's a better mistake.
It's a better story for the people who are in charge of making the narrative.
There you go.
Yeah.
Right. It's a mistake, no doubt about it, because we corrected it.
Yes.
We corrected it.
We corrected it. Yes.
If you read Kate, I almost just called her Kate Walsh.
Well, because I was talking about Stang. I went to high school with her, and she's in the news.
I listen to Kate Walsh every morning, just about.
Yeah.
When I have the morning news on. But anyway, Kay Robertson, our news director. If you read her story, and I encourage you to read it closely. Kate is a very good journalist, and I would say she's very detail-oriented. And she's not a wise guy like me and my partner here, right? She's just telling the straight story. You read that story, you can see that it was confirmed by that there were weapons found after she asked them about it.
Right.
They didn't come running
They didn't
to
come
us.
out and say, actually, we found this, and maybe people should know.
Right. It was when our news department and the former Kate called and said, hey, we happen to have an internal communication here from a Sergeant Patello describing you found a weapon. Oh no, actually, that is true, right? I mean, guys, that's a big mistake. And as Mark has pointed out, we don't always get the internal communication of the police department.
Yeah, right, exactly.
What we always get are press releases.
Yes.
But what are they worth? What are they worth?
yeah, exactly. It begs the question: is how many internal communications would we, if we were to be sent an internal communication along with every press release, would those two things corroborate?
Exactly
is the question.
And Marcus, let me ask you this, because you've been here a while and you've been following these stories for a while. It's a big deal. I've never seen another high school event where you had to have that many police from that many departments there.
Yeah.
Right? So whatever was going off was big time. All right?
Yeah.
And whatever they anticipated was going to continue to happen. And the crowd would not listen to the police. They would not listen to the state police. They weren't intimidated by the Sheriff's Department canine or the New Bedford canines. That is a big problem.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big problem. So much so they had to bring in all the area departments.
Yeah.
Now, normal circumstances, Marcus, the men and women of the New Bedford Police Department can handle a couple high school kids.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's not a big, tall order. These are men and women in the New Bedford Police Department, professionals. For them to have to call for that many bodies and dogs, it's unprecedented.
Yeah. Because they know they're taking it away from other towns, too.
Right.
They're taking the help away from other towns when they do that.
Right.
Yeah.
And let me just say this. I know the great men and women of the Freetown Police Department. I hired many of them, including their leader. For them to have to come all the way to New Bedford to put down a civil disturbance doesn't happen, right? And I'll ask the people of New Bedford, do you want a situation where your kids and other people's kids are so out of control that you're going to call in the state police?
Right.
Because I love the state police, but let me tell you, that's not a gentle group of guys. That is not a gentle group. I'll give you my little, and why I say that I know kids get in trouble. I remember one Halloween, I wasn't doing it. I was standing on the periphery, just watching kids acting a fool on Halloween, throwing eggs, things like that. They called for the state police backup. That state trooper got out of his car. He didn't ask a single, he didn't say a word. He just started swinging that baton, right? Swinging that baton.
I don't think you can do that now.
Let me tell you something. That was the last gasp of the 80s. I saw the trooper. I was already booking it when I saw the trooper,
right?
Because I knew I could not go home to my father with a state trooper. But when I saw the Billy Club, I was already gone, right? My point being is that a big situation happened. And the facts of the matter were obvious, but it shouldn't take an internal communication leaked to the media.
Yeah.
For us to get the truth on that.
Well, and you remember all the stuff that happened just about a year ago, like last spring or around last spring, when they were trying to get the former chief in front of the city council to talk about some of the crime rates and this disparity. What they saw is the disparity in the reportings of the crime rate.
I forgot about that, Mark.
And then they subpoenaed them. I was in front of the Public Safety Committee. I remember I had conversations with Councilor Gomes and Councilor Dunn all day to find out whether or not the chief was coming to this meeting that he had agreed to come to. I think he got orders from the top not to. But then he doesn't show up, because they didn't want to show up at the same time that Hank did. The Hank Turgeon, at the time, the former, it's now Chris Cotter, but the former president of the then current president of the police union, who did a really good job, because they were looking for some. And if they were what they wanted to do, aside from the crime rate reporting, which he said they all said, Hank said the boots on the ground guys say this is a disparity. This is disparate from what we're experiencing, which again, I admittedly is anecdotal, but they're still out there doing the stuff. They know how busy they are and how busy they aren't.
Right.
And he also talked about there was another productive conversation about ShotSpotter, and they said, well, even if it's only 25% effective, what if we catch somebody in a murder 25% of the time or a shooting 25% of the time? That sounds like worth $100,000 investment to me, right?
Right.
So it was a lot of good productive conversation, but the chief couldn't be involved in it because he was stopped from being involved in it, even though he was asked to come by the the city council who writes
by
his budget.
a legitimate form of government. Right.
The people who write his budget.
Right.
So.
And have been given subpoena power by the taxpayers.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is it feels like a reoccurring thing.
So, Marcus, we remember that when there was a shooting of a police officer's house at Brickwood Housing Project.
Well, that's when it was.
That was the genesis of that, right?
That was the genesis of it. Yeah.
Because there was so much backwards and forwards about what was really going on there. And look, I get it. It's embarrassing for the city.
Mm-hmm.
But, you're not going to get anywhere by pretending things aren't happening.
Yeah.
Right? And the fact of the matter is that I think you do a lot better off at budget time if you talk about your problems when you have the opportunity to talk about them. And by the way, if you'd like to get on the air, you can at 508-996-0500. By the way, we're looking for any city councilor that wants to call in, or a school committee member that wants to call in and address this.
Yeah. 508-996-0500 is how you can get on. Let's actually go to the phones now. Good evening.
How about any former news directors at the WBSM? You taking those calls?
Yeah, absolutely, Taylor. It's Taylor. Oh, you can't hear it?
No.
What do you? Hold on, Chris.
Can you hear me now?
Chris is actually swapping out some headphones. I don't know what you can't hear the phones. You can hear my voice, but you can't hear the phones. You can hear my voice because it's across the table.
Testing 3, 4. Hello. How now, brown cow? Can you hear me?
Let's do this. We can. All right, we can hear you.
All right. So you guys have touched on something that it was a problem back when I was in that position, and this has been a problem ever since the untimely demise of Chief David Preventure, which is the serious lack of transparency with the New Bedford Police Department to the media. And it grinded my gears so many times in that newsroom, and really irked a lot of people in the media, including in the Standard Times. I had many conversations with multiple reporters about the lack of transparency, and it's really detrimental to the work that the men and women on the police force are doing every single day, that the facts are not reported accurately the first go-around. We had to rely, when I was there, on sources at the scene and not official sources within the City of New Bedford Police Department in order to get a story. And then the police department would have to jump back and come back at us and say, well, no, you had this wrong and this wrong, and that didn't happen. Well, if you had told us that to begin with, when we initially asked you,
right,
this would not be an issue. Chief Preventure was fantastic at media relations. If ever there was any significant event revolving around the city, he would hold a press conference that evening at the scene, and you could ask him any question. Nothing was off limits. He'd tell you if you were right or wrong for asking the question, or if he could or couldn't answer it, but he was very direct and forthcoming with information that he could come forth with. That has not happened under the previous police chief, and it seems that it's not happening again. There were many instances I can point to. There was a call with a former city councilor who made a call onto the air several years ago reporting gang activity inside of a restaurant. It was corroborated by councilor's mother. We had two sources, one of them a city official. City of New Bedford Police Department would not comment on what was going on. We had to run with the story. It had already gone to air over one of the talk shows. And later that day, there was a bleep storm of communications from the City of New Bedford Police Department trying to quell the story.
Yeah.
And this also happened with the investigation into another city councilor last year or the year prior, where there was one narrative put out from the City of New Bedford Police Department, and it culminated in a district attorney special investigation. So this is a rampant issue that the city has to deal with, and it's a double-sided here, double-edged sword, where you have city officials really talking about the demise of certain media outlets within the city, specifically the Standard Times. Well, the fact is they're contributing to that, and they're not giving them the information that makes it appealing for any readers or subscribers to the paper or any other outlet, for that matter, to listen to or to read or to watch. So they're not getting the information they need, so they drop these subscriptions.
Right.
So you have huge problems that are being caused by this lack of transparency or willingness to come forward with information because you think that it might be damaging to the city's reputation. That needs to stop. You want to get a good reputation, you start being honest with the people in New Bedford.
We're speaking with Taylor Cormier, of course, the executive producer of the Howie Carr Show, heard here on WBSM from 3 to 7. Taylor, so as you're pointing out, this is not a new problem at all. Now, in your media experience, and now you're outside of the New Bedford media market, would you say this is unique to New Bedford?
I wouldn't say it's specifically unique. I've not run it. I can point to my experience in the newsroom at BSM, where it was unique to New Bedford in the immediate areas that we covered.
So I agree with you. I think that's the right way to put it. Right? Go ahead.
We didn't have that problem with Fairhaven, New Bedford, Freetown, Taunton. Nobody had that issue with us. Mattapoisett, Marion. We never had any problem. You can ask any of the local reporters, and they'd tell you the exact same thing. There is a separate issue of whether to release mug shots. That's become not exactly a unique situation to New Bedford. I don't agree with the stance that the city has taken. I'm of the mindset that that's public information once it's documented within the cities. They suspect that person of a crime. Why shouldn't they come forward with that information to the public?
Right.
But that's another issue that's I think still ongoing in the court system. But as far as the immediate area is concerned, and the stretch that outlets like WBSM, New Bedford Guide, the Standard Times have, that does seem very specific to the New Bedford Police Department.
It's very unfortunate, Taylor, because the reality of it is that eventually we're going to get the true story anyway. So then they just look bad. They look worse.
Yeah, and that's how many times is that going to happen? Again, those examples I pointed to are just two of many during my tenure there, and I'm sure Kate has dealt with great consternation at the phone number of the chief of police's office. It's despicable. It does not reflect well upon the city, and it doesn't do any good for the reputation of anybody.
Hey, thank you so much, Taylor, for giving us a call. We appreciate it and for backing up our major thesis here. Appreciate it, Taylor. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Taylor Cormier, former news director here at WBSM, executive producer of the Howie Carr Show. Really great call because it added some experience and expertise to the problem that we're discussing. I also have some fairly breaking news that I'm going to hold until the break. So stay tuned. So stay tuned. 508-996-0500 is how you can get in the program tonight. So I've got a couple of one of the good things about South Coast Tonight is that we can, one of the things that we wanted about it is that we could have live updates and reactions to meetings that happen locally, because they usually happen after hours, right? Town meetings and city meetings and all of that. So,
you got some news.
Yeah, so we got some news. On September, this is coming from the Dartmouth School Committee. So we all know about the issues going on with the Indian logo, and there was a referendum, and the referendum to keep the Indian name and logo was kept overwhelmingly 80% to 81%, I think, of the voters in the town had voted to keep that logo with support of tribal members, to include tribal members that actually played on the Dartmouth High football team, right? So it's all important to remember, because there was like a few people trying to bring up this issue, and the local tribal, there were some tensions between the local tribal members and the the full tribe in Aquina had, but on the vineyard. But ultimately, the local tribal members prevailed. They said to get rid of the Indian logo would be an erasure of their history in the town of Dartmouth, and that logo was designed by a member of the local tribe.
Right.
So the Wampanoag tribe. So anyway, I'm getting from a tribal member. I got an update that on September. This is I think it seems like a resolution in those tensions, but we'll see. On September 23rd this year, 2 plaques will be unveiled at the Dartmouth High Gymnasium for an afternoon ceremony and a plaque ceremony and a plaque ceremony will happen at the football stadium at halftime. Both will be honoring Dartmouth Indian and local indigenous contributions. It was just announced tonight at the school committee meeting. So at Dartmouth Stadium, there'll be if you're at the Dartmouth High football game at Dartmouth Stadium, there will be on September 23rd. There will be a plaque unveiled to commemorate local indigenous contributions and at the gymnasium as well. So it seems like a good, resolution. It seems like a resolution in this conflict thus far.
We're sure the lefties won't think it's antagonizing. Will Shannon Jenkins be okay with
the
that?
school committee? Well,
Dr. Shannon Jenkins.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing is that the school committee voted on it. I don't know what her vote was.
Dr. J.
I'm not Dr. J.
Dr. J's here.
I'm not sure what her vote specifically was on it, but the school committee voted on that. So it looks like, again, it seems like that battle.
It seems like the community has moved on.
It looks like the community's moved on.
It looks like they didn't have a problem with it to begin with, actually.
They never did.
It was an invented problem.
It was an invented problem. And then at the end of the I remember once the Dartmouth people
maybe
of Dartmouth,
Dr. J will grab a rebound off the board.
I remember the people of Dartmouth who voted 80-20 to keep it. I remember the people that were still against the Indian logo had said, well, matters of civil rights aren't left to a referendum, right? Which I agree, but this isn't what we're talking about.
Not where you sit on the bus.
Yeah, exactly.
But Marcus, what if they gave them the plaque and now they want to take it back? What would that be? Now, will there be tickets being sold for the event? I hope nobody starts jacking the price up, and selling them out in the street. What do they call that? I just would hate for someone to start doing things like that.
I'm glad we're behind on breaks because I'm going to take
the Native American event.
I'm going to take a break now.
We'll be right back, folks.
Listen to us live.
Alrighty, so welcome back to the show, Marcus. We were talking about the fight at the football game.
More specifically,
yes.
the inconsistent reporting that followed from the police department and what that means going forward for press releases that we get, internal communications. It's sort of where
and it's not just us being sensitive, as you heard from Taylor Cormier.
Yeah.
Who just called in formerly here as a news director and now at the executive producer of the Howie Carr show. We're not being sensitive. We're not being we're not making a mountain out of a molehill. This is a big problem.
Yeah.
And it's unique to New Bedford in many ways.
It is.
That we have to play catch up with them all the time.
Yeah. This isn't really like the boots on the ground police issue. It's higher up.
Well, right, yeah, because it's not the men and women of the police department who are in the cruisers or who are at the riot or the fight at the football game who are sending out these press releases, right? The only reason we know is because somebody leaked out the internal communication written by a Sergeant Botello that gave the narrative of what had happened, where we found out that, in fact, a taser weapon had been recovered on the scene.
Yeah.
The charges are now pending, which is not the story that
maybe they
released to the
thought
media.
at the time, well, this correction's like de minimis because, nothing happened or, no one was assaulted with that taser.
Right.
No one was hurt with that taser and it was dropped and, but they suspected it. They suspected someone of having that weapon. They ended up finding that weapon. You said there's criminal charges that are being brought or at least considered.
That's what we understand, yeah.
So it's just, when we talked about some other goings on that happened between the administration and the city council and the union about these types of reportings. So again, it's unfortunate that it begs the question of, basically how good are these press releases that we're getting?
Right. And Marcus,
is this issue going on elsewhere? Taylor Cormier says locally it's not. Locally, it's not an issue.
Right. All the other departments. And look, I know that's true. If I call Fairhaven, sometimes they'll say to me, I can't answer that question.
Yeah.
But that's not steering me in the wrong direction. That's telling me, Chris, because I can't answer that.
Understanding that there's department regulations and even laws in place that prevent police officers from commenting on certain things.
And certainly so I'll give you another example. Because you know the person is always telling you the truth, if they ask you something, maybe that wouldn't be helpful to print that.
Yeah.
My experience is I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
If a police department. But you know what? Fool me once, Mm-hmm. I could tell you that, Marcus. The other thing is that from the response, the fact that they had to call so many other departments in, there's more to the story.
508-996-0500. Good evening. You're live.
Good evening, fellas. I think it's a problem, but it's not a problem from today. I think it's been going on in New Bedford certainly for years. I know things that happen in the city that even when the Standard Times was fully staffed, and because the people had the right connection or they knew the right guy, it just never made it. And that was coming. It was something that happened at the police department. It was never reported to the public. It was never reported to the newspapers. And I saw it happen time and time again to where it was just, I think it was just standard operating procedure in New Bedford. And I think people put up with it. And part of it, I think you have different languages. You have a Portuguese media. I don't know how strong the Spanish media is in New Bedford. You have an English-speaking media. I mean, so you have really three different medias who really probably aren't talking to each other. I'm not in the business. I don't know. You guys are. So, I think that's a major problem. And it's shame on the politicians who let it go. The current mayor seems to feed right into it. And I think he does it because he wants to make New Bedford look good. And part of me says, okay, that's great. But we're owed the truth, and we're not getting it. So my 2 cents. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for the call. Appreciate it. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back, folks.
Why should you download
30 seconds here? We're going to go into the next hour. I do want to carry the conversation over a little bit, but also I think it's a nice transition to the other conversation we were going to have about the Plymouth County District Attorney's race, because the Bristol County one's over. I know we've got a lot of people out there in Marion, Rochester, Mattapoisett, Plymouth, Wareham, so
and what
Middleborough.
A contrast.
Huh? And
what a contrast.
And this is unlike the other election. This is two serious people that are running, right? There are one opponent that's got a legitimate